Hi, I'm Patricia Allingham Carlson, and this is my video called Believe 4. A friend of mine from long ago college years contacted me about a commission from my Believe series. And a series it's become. This little Christmas tree in the middle of the woods has seemed to touch people, making them feel happy. I guess it's all about Christmas magic. Anyway, my friend asked for her art piece to be vertically or portrait oriented, and she asked that if possible I could add a deer into the scene, a doe. It worked. I just sent the painting off today, and I hope it makes her smile. Hope you'll give it a thumbs up, and now let's paint. I began with a very simple sketch for perspective, so I could get the path or the trail leading off behind a sloping hill. Next, I pulled out my masking fluid to mask off the leaves that were sort of hanging, left over, and a beautiful orangey brown from a few trees growing in the woods. I'm not sure if these trees are oak trees or beech. Either way, the species seems to cling to its leaves for a long time, and they seem to add a little color to a very white and gray landscape. Getting the trail right so my perspective works. Sketching on the tree, and when the masking's dry, I get the whole background nice and wet. I'm planning ahead for where my sunburst is going to be, as the sun that I took a photograph of coming through the trees made a beautiful burst in my photographic reference. This will be a very white or light colored area, so I'm painting around that. All along the horizon is wet, and I begin in with some colors for distant trees in the woods. The sky was a brilliant blue, and I'm also painting that in. I'm using cobalt blue here, and you can see where I'm painting around the sunburst on the right side where the rays reach down. When I take a photograph of a sunburst, I frequently see some pink or magenta along the edges in the photograph, sometimes some golds too. So since these colors are so pretty, I'm adding them into my painting as well. Next will be the distant trees. First, I had to get the sunburst just about close to right, although there it's got a long way to go. Some purple lake along the horizon line, some ultramarine blue, and I bring up some sketchy looking trees into the wet background where they will fade and hopefully look like a distant forest, although they will be developed some more. I just got a new color called quinacridone gold, and it's really just gorgeous. So you could see that coming into the distance as well. And that's for those beech or oak trees that cling onto their leaves. Some pines are coming in with Hooker's Green Dark. And this, again, is all working wet on wet, so the colors are blurring. That's what I want for the distance. First, I work with the base of the trees in the forest, and then I begin to bring some trees up that are growing taller in the background. As I paint them into the sunburst, I am fading them out because the sun overwhelms the colors and you can't see any forms in it. It's just a burst of light. Later I'll add some very light colored forms of some trees that are all faded out by the sun. But along the sides and edges, I'll make the trees more clear in the background. I'm tweaking the colors and trying to get them just right to my satisfaction. Bringing them up and peeking them in and out of the rays of sun. I'm working with that magenta color to show the very top branches. Now I'm working into the middle ground and a bit into the foreground with where I want to place my dominant tree forms. There are 3 young trees just a little further back than the Christmas tree will be. They're the ones whose leaves I masked off previously because I want the leaf color to be nice and bright and not all faded out into the other colors in the background. You see my iPad on the right. That's loaded up with my photograph picture, my reference picture, so that I can refer to it as I work. I don't entirely go off of my reference picture, but it does really help me to get the idea of the space and the natural appearance that I'm copying. Slowly detailing the background distant trees. I want them to look right, and it does take a lot of time to get it that way. Here, I'm working with the rays of light on the right-hand side. I'm softening the edges, bringing in a little bit more yellow, and trying to make them look see-through or translucent like light, and not like solid, hard-edged objects. I'm softening the edges with a damp brush blending and a paper towel to blot. I also soften the colors down below into the forest where they actually are hitting, because that light bleaches them out as well. I turn my paper different ways. It helps me to achieve straight lines by slanting the paper. And I don't know why that works, but by all means, turn your paper any which way you want to get the lines and the angles that you need. I'm taking a very pale blue and painting in the shadow markings for reference for myself. Now this trail is on the edge of a slope. It's trampled snow. It comes down to the trail from the slope. Some edges melt and drop off like little cliffs. Some are smoother. A snowy bank is not just a big white blob. It has shadows and it has drifts. So I'm marking those drifts and shadows going up the bank and up the hill, which helps define it and give it some character as opposed to a big white blob. When you're shading on a hill, though, Always remember to go uphill. Don't try making it flat if it's a hill. Use a diagonal. Just a few little marks around the edge of the Christmas tree so I don't make a mistake and paint into it. And now I'm moving into some closer trees. Where you see the tree disappearing, that's where the masking fluid is. Now where these trees are growing from the bottom of the hillside, you'll notice I've slanted the trunks as well. And that is what they do on a hillside. If you tried to make the trunks flat across, they would not look natural because the hill's going up and the snow's covering part of them in a diagonal way. The masking is coming off for where those leaves are going to be. Now I have to paint around them, but in the meantime I'm starting some color on them. I'm also softening the edges of those leaves that were masked off so they are not hard. There is a place in my paintings for hard edges. A natural scene in a forest with some middle ground trees. Generally, they're going to be more soft edged. So I'm going around these edges with a damp brush, making them blend in a little bit. I'm blending some background in around them, and I'm trying to make them look natural, like they belong there. In my photograph, there was a lot of very light colors in these leaves where the sun was making them sparkle. So I plan to try to leave a lot of that white. But now I'm correcting the edges to make it look right. I'm painting a couple more sloping shadows onto the snowdrift on the left side. I paint a light purplish blue line, and then I soften it with my damp brush. I'm trying to make it irregular, not all neat and tidy and symmetrical, because it is not, unless somebody raked it. It's time to start the tree. The Christmas tree, that is. So to begin, I'm masking off where all the ornaments are going to be. If I keep these colors nice and white, so that when I paint the colors on, they will be bright and pretty and festive, the masking does the perfect job. Then I can freely paint in the evergreen colors with lighter boughs, followed by darker boughs underneath. Have you ever studied a evergreen tree and how it's built? They aren't like regular trees. They sort of grow in layers, with the boughs coming out either at an upward angle or a downward angle from the trunk. Each layer will be a little bit lighter where it sticks out and a little darker underneath where the shadow part is. So I start with the brighter colors. The trunk goes up the central part, so that part will generally be shaded. And after the lighter colors, I put in the darker ones. It has dried at this point, and I'm removing the masking. You can see the star on top that I masked out. That's a lot of painting. The first thing I do is paint around the star with some darker edges of the forest in the background to define the star, which will remain light colored. I get some yellow on my brush and begin with all my yellow ornaments and around my star. That's what I try to do, is start with a color and put it all over the tree where I want it, and then go on to the next color and do the same. It saves a little time rinsing your brush. So that's worked pretty well. In some of these little tiny ornaments, I'm leaving a white spot where perhaps it's a reflective shine. In others, I paint them a solid color. And in many of them, I paint around the edge to soften the edges of the little balls so that they look like they're glowing instead of just stuck on there. I think trying to simulate that glow adds to the magic of the scene. It's funny painting such a small tree on a painting that's only about 8 by 10. Would seem like it would go pretty quickly. But there was at least an hour or more of work in this one tree alone, getting it just right so it looked natural and sparkling and pretty. But if I showed you that whole hour, that would be really boring. So we're speeding it up. What's next? I'm looking at another scene on my iPad to try to get some shadows correct. So I think that's what I'll be doing next. No, it's back to the tree again. It's shadow time. I want to suggest that somebody, maybe Santa Claus, walked up to the tree with a whole big bag of decorations and walked around and placed them. So the footprints go all around the tree and up the hill. They also walk off down the path. The tree shadows radiate out from the placement of the sun against them, and they look so pretty on the snow. Now the snow is not flat and straight across, so the shadows can't be flat and straight across. They have to curve with the slopes and all the little hills and all the little grooves and all the activity of the wind and footprints on the snow. So when I paint the shadows, I start them out light and then I paint them in heavier. And I'm trying to conform to what the snow's doing underneath them. So that takes a while and several layers. In fact, the footprints take a while and several layers too, because I'm never sure at the beginning how dark to make them. After I put them down, I soften the edges and blot up the extra water from my damp brush blending. Look at a reference photo and see what footprints in the snow look like, because that worked best for me. Now the shadows are getting a little darker. And you could see how they add a nice dynamic with all those diagonal lines coming into the composition. So if you were to paint an animal into this painting and it was yours, what kind of animal would you paint? My client asked for a deer, specifically a female deer, a doe. I think I found just the right place to put it, and that will be my next big challenge on this composition. A little squirrel or a rabbit, a fox. That would be a fun thing to paint into a painting like this too. I'd be interested to hear what you think would look nice. I've added a little more gold to the leaves clinging onto the little sapling trees, and now I'm sketching in the deer. I'm referencing a photograph of a deer, and after I've sketched it very lightly, I begin to paint it. This is rather meticulous work because this is a small animal, and I don't want to get it wrong. So I'm being very, very careful and working with a very teeny brush. I'm using a very classic position, and the deer is facing into the painting, not out of it. If you put something on the edge of your painting that's looking out of the picture, you tend to draw attention away from your painting when you really want people to look at it. So if your subject is facing into the painting, it's more likely to keep folks' attention. This deer is so small, you really can't see the details. But maybe you can in the end picture and the beginning picture. I did a pretty good job, I think. At the very end, I decided to make a little red ornament that fell off the tree and rolled down the slope and is embedded in the snow by the path. Red is a logical color for that to have happened because it really stands out against the snow. I thought it might add a little touch of whimsy. I'm signing it, and it's done. I hope you enjoyed my video, Believe 4, and how I painted it step by step. It would be awesome if you'd hit a thumbs up, and if you ring the bell below to subscribe, because then you won't miss any future videos. There's some other links down below too. Links to my Facebook art page, my blog about art and life, some products I like to use when I'm painting, and also my products page at Fine Art America Pixels, where I sell a lot of my work on reproductions of prints, coffee mugs, shower curtains, blankets, all sorts of things. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope that your holidays are very happy. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next video.